Welcome to Category Visionaries, the show dedicated to exploring exciting visions for the future from the founders who are on the front lines building it. In each episode, we'll speak with a visionary founder who's building a new category or reimagining an existing one. We'll learn about the problem they solve, how their technology works, and unpack their vision for the future. I'm your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines Media. Now let's dive right into today's episode. Hey, founders, and thanks for listening. Today, I'm speaking with Amy Brown, CEO and founder of Authenticx, a listening AI platform that's raised over $28 million in funding. Amy, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Brett.
Not a problem. Super excited for the conversation. I'd love to begin with just a quick summary of who you are and a bit more about your background.
Yeah, so I am a first-time tech founder. Founded Authenticx in 2018 after spending about 20 years navigating my career through the business of healthcare. Started in state government in a policy role within state of Indiana Medicaid, and then went into the private sector working for various managed care companies, Medicare, Medicaid, commercial organizations. And at the peak of my career was the chief operating officer for a global travel medical insurance company. And I had just hit a stage in my life. I don't know if it was because I had had 4 kids by that point, if I had surpassed the 40-year mark in my age, or I had just had enough career experience to really see the problem that I was most passionate about solving. But it was at that point in my life where I said that I just couldn't die happy if I didn't start this business. And so I went for it in late 2018 and started Authenticx.
Did you have that master plan in the back of your head that maybe someday you would launch a company, or did it really just come out of nowhere?
Something in the middle. It was kind of like this growing evolution of a seed that was planted at one point in my career. And over the course of a few years, it just continued to be nurtured. And it was like this inner voice that started as a whisper and then was so strong within a few years that I couldn't unhear it anymore. And I just got this really strong feeling in 2018 that this was the time was now. There were enough like market factors, business factors, and just life factors that led into me choosing the time to actually launch. But it was a growing wave, I would say.
A couple of other questions we like to ask, and the goal here is really just to better understand what makes you tick. First one, what founder has really inspired you along the way?
One that I've enjoyed learning the most about is a gentleman named Don Brown. We are not related, even though we have the same last name, but he was a physician who started in tech, dabbled in a variety of different types of tech, ended up founding a company called Interactive Intelligence here in Indianapolis, where I'm based, and sold that business to Genesis for $1.4 billion in 2016. And I've had a chance to meet him and learn about kind of his humble beginnings in Kentucky and learned about his risk-taking, his inventiveness. And I've just really respected and admired that. And it's been fun to watch.
What about books that have had a major impact on shaping you, not just as a founder, but as a person?
Yeah, so there are 2 in particular that have really kind of shook me. The first is a book called Falling Upward by Richard Rohr. And it talks about the 2 halves of life. And those halves of life are not dependent on your age. It really has to do with crossing over that happens maybe at a deeper level within you. And I feel like that's what I was starting to experience when I decided to start Authenticx. And so first half of life is when you're building, figuring out who you are, building your career. And then second half of life is when you kind of have this moment of reflection and kind of figure out who you really are. And it just has been a book that's really helped me a lot in navigating my own internal transitions in life. And then the second book I would love to mention is a book called How to Listen by Oscar Trimboli. I have just found that book to be really applicable in the everyday. I think in our world of distraction and micro moments and sound bites and memes, it's just so refreshing to kind of dive into a different part of our brains where we're really connecting with our own voice internally and also listening to others. And it's been a really, really useful book to me.
Now, to switch gears a little bit, I'd love to dive deeper into the company. So how we like to begin this part of the interview is really focusing on the problem. So what problem do you solve?
So the problem is that there's about 1 billion customer service conversations that happen across the US every day. And those inbound customer service conversations are coming from the voice of consumers who are in desperate need of help and assistance. And in the healthcare sector, the type of assistance those individuals need include getting access to care, getting through the insurance or scheduling process. They're waiting for lab results. They're waiting to get approved for care that they need. And the administrative burden of our healthcare system in this country is just that the weight is at an all-time high of that. And the US healthcare system is the poorest performing from an administrative cost perspective in the world. Costs the most, and it's a contributing factor to our also not great healthcare outcomes. And so the business problem that we're trying to solve is leveraging customer service conversations, specifically those that are flowing in and out of the healthcare industry every single day. We leverage those recorded conversations as unstructured data. We utilize proprietary AI machine learning models to listen intently for what the signals are through all of that noise to help healthcare leaders understand the problems in their business that they have control over fixing, but aren't aware of without this technology.
Take us back to 2018. What was it about this problem that made you say, yep, that's it, I'm going to go build a business around this?
Well, it was the problem that I was living every day as the COO. And part of my job responsibility was managing our various call centers. And I had the C-suite always asking, how do we get our call volume down? How can we lower our headcount in customer service? That's our cost center of the business. And I kind of started to develop a chip on my shoulder as the COO because I started really listening to these conversations that my call center agents were taking. And I realized, wow, there's value in these conversations that could actually help our C-suite, our strategy officer, our head of sales, head of marketing. And this data is being stored in our cloud, and we're not really leveraging it as a whole. So I just saw the need and the massive gap. Meanwhile, we had our marketing and sales team scrambling to put together an NPS survey program, scrambling to figure out, like, how do we get into the heads and minds of our customers so we can retain and attract new ones? And I was like, guys, the keys to the kingdom are in this conversation data. It's right here. And clearly it's hard to access. It's hard to wrangle because it's unstructured data. So I just became super passionate about solving that problem. I knew that I would need tech to help solve for that problem. So one of the very first things I did was find a tech partner in my chief technology officer, Michael Armstrong, who helped me build out the platform and the AI models that became our product.
Take us back to the first paying customers that you were able to land. What was that like? And what did you learn from that process of landing those first paying customers?
Oh my gosh. It was in the early days of where I'm totally bootstrapped. I had never raised capital before. I wasn't even thinking about raising capital. The first thing I was trying to do is prove to myself that someone would actually buy the idea of what I was trying to build. So it was a few months into me free falling that I finally landed a couple of those early clients. And I will tell you, the first sizable contract was at the very end of 2018. It was in December. And I took the call from the prospective client right around dinner time. And I have 4 children and a husband, all who were depending on me because I was the only source of income when I started this business. And so it was a big risk for my entire family. And when I got that call and the client said that they were going to buy my company, my idea, I went downstairs to the dinner table and I was in tears and I was high-fiving my kids. I remember saying, like, mommy's going to make it, you guys. You can count on me. We're going to make this happen. So, I mean, it was a real act of surrender to whatever the universe would respond with when I was making the call of putting this product idea out there. And it was an incredible serendipitous moment for me. And it really was, and that particular client has just grown 100 times over since that time. And it's been a huge story of our success.
When it comes to your marketing philosophy, how would you define it or describe it?
Gosh, our marketing philosophy is really about being the adult in the room, particularly in this AI hype cycle that we're in. We were an AI company before it began, and no one knew what we were talking about. Now we have to maintain a voice that is responsible, that is level-headed. We have an incredible marketing team that is really focused on ensuring that we're delivering very clear messaging around our ROI. And we know that the AI that's going to win and still be standing at the end of all this is AI that actually brings meaningful value to the world around us. We've been very intentional about the markets we're marketing to. We've been very honest about what we say our capabilities are. And that's just an important part of being a founder and being able to sleep at night for me. So our messaging, our content, how we put it, how we show up in the world is very important to me and something that I stand behind. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Some of the other founders that are building in the AI space have told me that before ChatGPT came out last November, it was all about trying to desperately create demand. And then all of a sudden when it came out, it was all about trying to capture demand. And they just saw a lot more competition and a lot more people talking about AI and using that in their messaging. Has it been something similar for you?
Yes, I'd say that resonates really well. I felt like before ChatGPT came out, we sell into the business buyer, not so much the tech buyer in the enterprises we sell to. And so we had to use different language to describe AI and AI capabilities. We needed to use analogies. We needed to use other language that could help connect really to the use case and what the business leader was looking to get out of AI. When ChatGPT came out, my sense from our clients was suddenly their executive teams were saying to our buyers, like, go find AI solutions now. We need to optimize our business and AI is going to help us. And while the market has been getting educated over time, it was a really big challenge for us to try to maintain what I said earlier, kind of that level-headedness in a market that seemed like it was kind of drunk, honestly, on all this information out there. And I think a lot of misconception about AI companies is suddenly life is easy for us, because there's so much demand. But actually, I think the challenge is still here. It's just a different challenge. And that is making sure that you're educating your buyer, that you're staying true to yourself, that you're taking a consultative approach. When a client approaches you and they are asking for A, and you think that there may need to be some revisions or some thoughts around how they get to the business outcome they're really looking for. I mean, it's a really challenging space, but also a super exciting one to be in. And I'm proud to be a thought leader in this space because we need that right now.
What have you done to really build up thought leadership?
Yeah, well, I spend time talking to awesome folks like you. I definitely spend time myself and our other senior leaders working on putting forth content, whether it's blogs or PR activities to make sure that we're communicating our message. I engage directly with our clients' C-suites to make sure that they feel that they have resources in me and my executive team. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And so we try to be extremely accessible, both putting things out into the universe and also being very, very responsive to the need. So that's one answer. I think the other answer is just really looking internally first and saying, hey, what is the message that you're trying to send? And what does the market need to hear right now? And just being really intentional about not just putting stuff out there for the sake of putting it out there, but putting out a message that you feel is worthy of being one of the voices in the space right now.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode.
How do you identify those topics to know, okay, this is something that's going to add value to the market and something that we want to invest in talking about and writing about?
Yeah, I mean, I try first to start by listening. Like I was just out at the JP Morgan conference, really big, attended a conference in San Francisco, and I listened to dozens of investors, bankers kind of talk about fears, concerns, the promise of AI, the hesitation of AI, the question and skepticism around use case and risks, rewards, all of that. And through listening, I can hear what the big questions are, where the fear is rooted, where the hopes are rooted. And I tend to weigh in on the things that I have a passion about that I feel might help bridge a gap or add some value to the conversation. And I really try to start by listening to what the audience that I'm engaging with is really pondering.
What do you think's been the most pivotal decision you've made in the company's history?
Oh, goodness. There have been several fork in the road moments. The earliest one was deciding to raise capital and go for a true AI platform. Because in the early days, I started with myself, a laptop, and my car. And I had an idea of what I wanted to do with conversation data, but I didn't have any AI models that I was leveraging at that point in time. When I got those early contracts, we were manually listening using myself and a few contractors and manually like tagging and labeling what we were hearing in these conversations. And once I had a few reps underneath me and was ready to move on, I really had to hit a fork in the road moment of, do I want to be in the consulting business that helps enterprises think through these types of opportunities and leverage different technology solutions out there? Or do I want to build the SaaS solution and the AI myself? And that was a real soul-searching time. And ultimately, I decided that the market needed something that would be ready sooner than later, that I needed to move with speed. And so it was at that moment of decision-making that I said, okay, I need to raise capital and I need to find a CTO that I trust that can help me build out the foundation of an AI company. And so that was probably the biggest decision I made early on.
Something that I see a lot is that being a startup founder is often glamorized, but from what I've learned from my conversations with other founders and experience myself is that's not always the case. There's definitely some low points in the journey. What would you say has been the lowest point of the journey so far, and how'd you navigate that low point?
Oh my goodness. Yes, you're so right. It is over glamorized, if that's the word. Glamorized? I don't know. You're so right. It is absolutely a challenging journey to be that of a founder. Some of the hardest times have been when I have to recognize my own lack of control over a situation, right? As founders, if you're crazy enough to be a startup founder, then you obviously have a lot of determination. You probably know how to get stuff done. You probably have a lot of energy. You like kind of command and control of your own destiny. And so you move with speed and with action, and you're usually pretty decisive, but that can only go so far. The universe and clients in the market has to respond, right? And as a control freak who's trying to recover from being a control freak, you have to just sometimes put it out there and wait. And that's really freaking hard. And so I have many memories of kind of just being literally in the fetal position on the floor of my office, just kind of waiting for a contract to sign or waiting for a term sheet that I really wanted to get from a particular firm. And there have been moments where it didn't come. And then there have been moments where it did, right? And just trusting that process is a sacrifice. It feels painful and it's also worth it.
What about your market category? I had introduced you as a conversational intelligence platform. Is that the right category, or what is the category?
You know what? That's such a great question because yes, that's the category that we're often placed in, but I kind of want to start a new category called listening AI because conversational AI, when you Google it, when you think about it, most people are thinking about generating conversation through chatbots or automated assistants, et cetera. And while that's absolutely a part of conversational AI, what we're really about is listening to all of that conversation-based data. So whether it's generated by a chatbot or it's generated by a human, when something speaks in written form or in verbal form, that is unstructured data that comes out. And what we're all about is collecting it, harnessing it, analyzing it, finding signals, structuring that unstructured data, and helping us all as human beings make sense of it all so that we can make better decisions going forward. So yes, we're leveraging conversations, but we're leveraging it for the sake of listening and responding to what we hear. And so I don't know if you'll help me with this, Brett, but I'd like to start a category called listening AI.
I definitely like the category name, and makes sense how you define that as well, or how you just describe that. Because yeah, when I hear conversational intelligence, I almost think like chatbots. I think that's like
Right.
the association that most folks have too, probably, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Chatbots. Exactly. So when we talk to Gartner, Forrester, others are placed in the conversational AI bucket, but we have to do a lot of education then around how we're different because we're not building a chatbot, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have Gen AI models. We do. It doesn't mean that we don't have all kinds of machine learning models that help interpret and understand the conversation. We do. But our goal is really not to replace the human element of conversations, even though that's a fine use case. Our goal is to understand what's going on in the conversation and use that knowledge and that insight to inform leaders. And that insight helps drive business decisions that can improve health outcomes, that can improve efficiency, and can also help drive revenue for the organization. Conversation data is the unsung hero, if you will, of data in that it is so rich with intel for business enterprises if it can only be tapped. And that's what we are all about.
I had Godard Abel, the CEO and founder of G2 on the show, and he was talking about category creation. And I was asking him a bunch of questions about that. And his number one piece of advice is to go out and partner with your competitors and make the case to the analyst firms, and then eventually to customers that you need a new category to exist. So for you, do you see other competitors who would fit in that listening AI category?
Absolutely. There are companies out there that are speech analytics companies, right? That are listening for sentiment, that are trying to help businesses know how to intervene in a conversation when a customer is escalating or they're frustrated, to help that agent or that contact center do better. And in a sense, we're using AI and technology to listen to conversations. I think where we're different is the outcome and what we're trying to do with it. We like to take a very macro lens to solve big problems with this data. We are less focused in changing that individual singular conversation between a contact center agent and that customer. But I think the advice was spot on. I think we could absolutely partner with our competitors and go for a different category.
It's definitely a scary feeling, I think. When you hear that advice, like it makes sense, but then the idea, I think, of partnering with competitors is always a bit scary, at least to me when I hear that advice.
Yeah, it is, along with so many other parts of the journey.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Now, as I mentioned there in the intro, you've raised over 28 million to date. What have you learned about fundraising throughout this journey?
Oh my goodness, so much. I've learned how to show up authentically. I think that was a journey when you're starting out and you feel like you in your series seed where you've got nothing, no revenue, no traction, and just an idea, but you need the money in order to continue to survive. That feeling can cause you to do unnatural things, right? Things that don't feel authentic in terms of your presentation and things that you agree to that years down the road, you're like, oh, why did I agree to that? And, you live and you learn. And I feel very fortunate that I made it to Series A and then Series B, because with each round, I was wiser. We were in a better shape because we had grown and had a great track record. I had choice, I had optionality, and all of that has afforded me the ability to be true to myself, authentic, show up. That means I get to decide yes or no. As much of a dating process for me as it is for the investor. And I don't take that for granted. I know I'm lucky and fortunate that I've been able to get into that position of having that type of choice. And I would just encourage other founders who are in the early stages of raising to just really listen to your inner voice on things. It's really easy to be clouded by all the advice you're getting. Advice is great, but at the end of the day, it has to resonate with you. And that's a lesson that I've learned along the way.
On the topic of advice, let's imagine that you were starting the company again today from scratch. What would be the number one piece of go-to-market advice that you'd give to yourself based on everything you've learned so far?
First of all, thinking of starting from scratch again scares the crap out of me.
Understandable.
I don't know if I could survive. I really don't. Oh gosh. Because yesterday I was talking to my husband and I was just like, oh, this is so hard. This is so hard. This is so hard. And I just kept saying, like, the stage we're at is so challenging, but there's never not been a time where I wasn't saying that. So I think I would speak to my younger self about staying focused in the early days. Again, like, you're kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall And in the early days, I didn't know that I was going to really double down on healthcare, because at the beginning, you're just like trying to get revenue, right? You just need revenue. You just need some reps. And I think that's true. And I'm glad I did not limit myself in attaining revenue. However, it's very easy to lose focus, and you can start to build out too many use cases for your product, and you kind of have to reckon with that later down the road. And so I would advise to just try to keep your scope impactful. It has to be impactful and relevant, but don't try to boil the ocean. Just focus in on a particular use case, one that the market demands, get some reps under your belt, and then keep moving and expand from there.
Final question for you before we're up on time here. Let's zoom out 3 to 5 years into the future. What's the big picture vision that you're building?
3 to 5 years, every corporation in the United States will be bringing the voice of their customer into the boardroom. And they'll be able to do that in a very scalable and real way, because they will have figured out how to access their conversational data in a way that is accessible, easy. When that happens, when the voice of the customer is truly in the boardrooms, the decision making will be smarter, will be much better informed, and I believe will impact the consumer experience of our healthcare system.
Amazing. I love the vision. All right, Amy, we are up on time, so we're going to have to wrap here. Before we do, if there's any founders that are listening in that want to follow along with your journey, where should they go?
Yeah, you can check me out, first of all, on our website, authenticx.com. And then you can also hit me up on LinkedIn, amy.brown, and I'd love to chat.
Amazing. Amy, thanks so much for taking the time. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
All right, no problem. Keep in touch.
Thanks.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.